Week 17. Last week, I set up the continuous delivery part of the CI/CD pipeline. I don't really have any of the CI part set up, the continuous integration part set up. I have no regression testing. In fact, I have no tests whatsoever in the repo right now. So any changes that are pushed into the repo would just take effect. I'll probably worry about the tests a bit later. As you're probably aware, most software developers, they want to write features. They want to make the app do more things. And they're rarely terribly concerned with regression or tests. And that's the icky and the sort of the bookkeeping part of it that we're not terribly interested in. That is not to say, though, your employer would strong arm you into doing this. And my previous employer certainly did. We didn't like it. But that's neither here nor there. But in an actual production app, it's a good idea to actually have the continuous integration of tests and the regression tests actually built in. It's just not what I did last week. Last week, I set up continuous delivery. It's an automated pipeline that takes the code that I commit into the repo all the way through to build and production. And a lot of people might be asking, like, why are you doing this? Why are you spending a lot of time setting up the continuous delivery when you're a solo developer coming up with a very simple app? And are there actual value in sort of putting a lot of effort into this and introducing a lot of breakages, right? Any one additional system that you set up, it would introduce a whole bunch of possibilities for it to break. And for folks not from a DevOps background, we might not appreciate the efficiency afforded by the continuous delivery pipeline. And I just want to sort of give you a little overview of the contrast between my workflow before I set it up and after I set it up. So before I set it up, I would, let's say that I want to implement some feature. I would write into my integrated development environment, which is the fancy version of a text editor, and then I would commit my edits into the repo. Okay, that's done, but that doesn't do anything. Now I need to actually generate the build, right? Generate the actual app for people to be able to test it or really to run it. And what you would have to do is either use a command line tool or in Android Studio, go through a couple menu steps to generate the app bundle. And after that, you have to sign it. Google Play Store won't take your app bundle unless it's signed, because otherwise it would have no idea whether or not this came from malicious source or coming from you. So you sign it using command line interface tools or Android Studio. After that, you have a file, but the file sits on your computer. It doesn't do anything yet again. You have to publish it. And how do you do that? You go on to Google Play Console, you open up a web page, log in, navigate to the right page, find the right testing track, and then go into the right release, upload this new app bundle you just created. And then you'd have to configure, like on a page, there are a lot of little toggles that you can configure. You have to configure those things, and you have to add a release title and the release notes. In a release notes, this is optional, but it's a good idea to have it. You want to tell your testers or your future users what has changed since your last update. And for that to happen, you'd have to go back into your commit history and then go through all the, hopefully you're using informative commit messages. And then you have to go through the entire commit history of the last release and find out all the things that you've done and then summarize it and then put it into that little box. And then you hit upload, and then it has to go through Google Play review component. To be fair, that's not something that you can expedite using a CD pipeline. But after that, once the review is complete, then you have to log back in again and then authorize it to be published, right? A lot of steps in this. And I didn't even mention how like, for instance, you'd have to make sure, there's a lot of little things you have to worry about. For instance, you have to make sure that the build number is incremented correctly, otherwise Google Play Store will reject your upload. You have to make sure that the build version is incremented correctly, and major, minor, patch. All these things you have to worry about, and there's so many steps that can fail in the whole sort of the manual git commit to publication pipeline. The continuous delivery takes care of all of that, and it's really not magical once you look at the underlying components of it. But if you didn't know it, like before, like me before, it's all very magical. All that needs to happen is I write my code, and then I push it to, let's say, the develop branch. The develop branch is not the master branch. Once I'm comfortable with this particular release, I can either merge the develop branch into the master branch, or what I like to do is I like to go see a nice user interface and go onto GitHub, find my branch, and then create a PR. Very easy, click a few buttons, and then for it to merge onto master. And then once it gets merged onto the master branch, then a tool developed by Google called Release Please, I like that name, would then go through your commit history and finds the commit between the last release and this release, reads and summarizes all your commit history, and then creates a new PR that's the release PR. In that PR, it will show you everything that it has detected. It'll automatically increment the build number, as well as increment the appropriate version number, right? And then you just wait for it to run. It takes on a free tier, it takes what, a minute, for not a big release. I mean, the bigger the release, the longer it has to go through your commit history to read the history, right? And it takes a minute. Then you'll have a PR. And you just read the PR. Does it make sense? Yes, it does. Okay, you hit merge, and you'll have you hit approve the PR, and then you'll have a new. As soon as that's done, the release please runs again, sees that you have approved the PR that I had created, and it would then create the release in your GitHub. And as soon as the release is created, it kicks off another GitHub Actions job to then perform the build. Again, because the build information and everything is already there, the build just builds it with the correct version as well as the correct build number, and then the builder would then push it to the correct endpoint in Google Play. You never actually have to log into Google Play, along with the correct release title as well as the release notes, changelog. And all of this, like, it's just a couple of interactions on GitHub, and then you can be sure that, you know, the thing will be built correctly and published correctly. And if you run into it, if the CD pipeline runs into any issues, then you'll receive a email notification for you to look into it a bit further. This is so much easier than what I had done before. A lot of times, you know, my last personal app that I developed, like, every release took a lot of time. Every release. And it was not an insignificant amount of time, and then over time it adds up to even more. And now I don't have to worry about that. I think it's money well spent, time well spent, right? I really haven't spent a lot of money. It's amazing how much free stuff you can do on GitHub. Anyways, that's last week for the CD pipeline. The continuous delivery pipeline is done. Next week. Last week, the goal that I set for myself was also complete originally, which was to apply and have approved the Apple developer account as well as the Google developer account. They are both approved, and I have both accounts open. And I realized during last week, the actual integration with monetization features within Google Play Console is actually not as trivial as I had anticipated. The whole sort of the whole handshake process when a user makes a purchase in your app is requires some study, and that's the goal for next week. And I think at this point I have settled on using an external tool to help me streamline the handshake in terms of a bug in terms of the Google Play Store handshake process for app purchases. And it's a service called the Revenue Cat. I just set up its handshake with the Google Play Store, my instance of the Google Play Store account. And the reason I picked it is because it's cross-platform. Specifically has very robust support. It seems to have very robust support for Kotlin multi-platform as well as Compose multi-platform. So I'll probably use that next week to set up a sort of a test track for the subscription features that I have in the app. And that will likely take me an entire week, because reading the documentation makes me think that, you know, they could have made it simpler, I suppose, but no, it's a bit more than that. Anyways, that's it for this week, and next week is to integrate Revenue Cat and make it work. I'll see you next week.